In this world, individuals can acquire epic skills by consuming the fruits from the skill tree. So if you're lucky, he might become a firebender or maybe even a sword saint.
現に名を馳せている冒険者は全員がとてつもなく強力なスキルの持ち主だ。
But when it comes to Light, all he became was a loser. On the day they were meant to get their skills, Light and his childhood friend Lena were on their way to the church to begin the ceremony.
からの夢だもんね。
ああ、今日やっと夢が叶うと思うと。
And they were excitedly talking about what skills they hoped to receive. Life has always wanted to become an adventurer, so he would be happy with any combat type skill. But Lena doesn't really care what skill she gets as long as she can spend time with Light. Still, she's a bit nervous since no one really knows what kind of skill they'll get until they eat the fruit. But Light is sure they'll both get amazing skills. However, we already know how that turned out for him. When he and Lena went into the church that day, the Holy Sister told them all about how the skill fruits work. You're granted a skill once you eat the fruit, and it will guarantee you a job in any related field of your choice, all without any crippling student loan debt. They are allowed to pick any one of these fruits to get their skill, but there is a rule that they can't break no matter what. You're only allowed to eat one skill fruit over the course of your entire life because if you try to eat a second, they'll poison you. A lot of people have ended up dying because they didn't like their skill and tried to eat a second fruit. So the Holy Sister wants to make it very clear that eating more than one has a 100% fatality rate. Lena is shocked to hear that the fruits are so dangerous, but the Holy Sister assures her that as long as she doesn't eat a second fruit, then she'll be perfectly fine. With the warnings out of the way, the Holy Sister tells them to begin selecting their fruit, so Lena steps up first. She takes a bite out of one of the fruits, and she immediately feels something happening to her body. There's a blinding light, and Lena's body suddenly becomes very hot. So the Holy Sister realizes that this must be the legendary sword. Skill is incredibly rare, so she never thought she would get to see someone acquire it in person. But now that Lena is officially a sword, saying she's destined to become one of the greatest adventurers in the country, Light is really happy for Lena, so he congratulates her on her amazing skill. But it's his turn next, so he steps up to the altar and picks a skill fruit for himself. He knows he probably won't get something as good as the Sword Saint skill, but he's still hoping to acquire a decent combat skill so he can fight by Lena's side. However, as he takes a bite and the skill flows into his body, he's disappointed to hear that he's just in that master. The sister tries to be as supportive as she can, but yeah, the only fighting Light is going to be doing is against the pests. Out in the field, Light is devastated that his dreams of being an adventurer have been ruined, so he asks if he can try again. But the sister was very clear about the 100% fatality rate, so she's not letting him eat another fruit. Lena endeavors to uplift Light by announcing that she will remain in the village and cultivate fruits alongside him, as she is unconcerned with her actions as long as they are in close proximity. However, the Holy Sister is unyielding in her opposition to this fanciful display of love and compassion. Lena's Sword Saint skill is a once-in-a-decade marvel, so she's not going to let her waste that talent by becoming a farmer. She demands that Lena become an adventurer for the sake of this country, and in fact, she'll be taking her to the royal capital immediately so she can begin her training there. Lena doesn't have the guts to refuse the Holy Sister's demands, so she gets dragged off, but she promises to come back for Light someday. 3 months have passed since that fateful day, and Light is trying to make the best of his situation by leaning into his role as a farmer. He uses his powers to make the nuts grow nice and big, and when they are ripe, he sells them for profit in town. So his life isn't so bad as long as he pushes those intrusive thoughts to the back of his head. Anyway, he heads into town to sell his nuts, but since his nuts are so small, he gets paid very little for them. As he was walking back to his house, he noticed a poster with some news about Lena. She's apparently been promoted to S rank in the 3 months since she left the village and is doing incredibly well for herself. Naturally, she is delighted for her, however, hearing about her success only serves to reinforce his sense of failure. Even though he knows that he doesn't have the skill to become an adventurer, Light has been training every day in hopes that he might naturally unlock a sword skill or something. He repeatedly strikes at a tree stump, and he believes that if he can split it in half with a sword, then he will be strong enough to become an adventurer by his own merit. However, hard work doesn't always pay off, so the only thing he got from all that training was some bruised wrists. He falls to the floor in defeat and begins wondering if Lena still remembers him. She said she would come back for him, but with all the fame and fortune she's acquired, he wouldn't be shocked if she had forgotten his name and his face altogether. Just then, a little girl named Ayla walks up to Light and says she brought him a cup of water. She's pretty much an orphan, and the village chief didn't want to deal with her, so he kind of just left her on Light's doorstep. One day, Light saw that she had nowhere to go, so he decided to take her in, and the two have been living together ever since. Ayla tells him she's done with dinner, so if he wants to, he can come inside to eat, and Light happily obliges. He takes his first bite of the food, and while he eats, Ayla asks how today's harvest went. Overall, Light says today's profits were pretty good, especially since he started focusing on growing skill fruits recently. And by the way, he separated all the skill fruits into those boxes clearly marked with skull emojis, so under no circumstances should Ayla eat any of those. Ayla hadn't realized that the skill fruits were dangerous to eat, so Leg's warning is really helpful. Or at least it might have been an hour ago because they used a bunch of those fruits to make the stew they are eating right now. Light gets up in a panic and asks if she's sure she put skill fruits in the stew, but she definitely did. And from what the Holy Sister said, eating a second skill fruit is a guaranteed death sentence. All of a sudden, Light's body begins to feel hot, and he feels a pain in his chest, so he believes this is how he will die. He falls to the floor, and in his final breath, he apologizes to Aaliyah because this is his fault for expecting her to understand the labels when she doesn't know how to read yet. However, as he lies there and awaits death, Light realizes that dying is taking an awfully long time. So he sits up, and to his surprise, he's perfectly fine. Ayla sees the confused expression on Light's face, so she asks him if he's fine. That's exactly why he's confused. He had a second skill fruit, which should have been fatal. So why and how is he still alive just then? He has a piercing headache and feels the power of a new skill rushing into his body. Just then, Ayla starts to feel a sharp pain in her body as well, and since she ate the stew, that must mean she's about to acquire a skill as well. All of a sudden, Ayla is able to see words floating in front of Light and reads out the info of his Nut Master skill. In addition to the ability to grow nuts, Light's skill also makes him immune to all nut poisons. Light is shocked and asks Ayla how she knows this, so she tells him she can see words floating in the air, and Light realizes she must have acquired some sort of appraisal skill. Ayla keeps reading Light's information and sees that he has a second skill now, so she tells him that he possesses an ability called Sword God. The Sword God skill greatly increases the Light's attack power when he's holding a sword, as well as greatly increasing his magic resistance. If what Ayla said is true, then this might mean that his dream can finally come true, so Light wants to test it out for himself. He runs outside with his sword and goes back into the forest to see if he really has a new sword skill. He raises his sword, and with a single swing, he slashes the tree stump in half, as well as that of the bigger tree behind it. So it's safe to say that as of this moment, Light is OP. The next day, he heads out into town so he can go to the guild and finally become an adventurer. He's really excited since he's always dreamed of coming here, and the first thing he spots is the notice board full of bounty quests. If they successfully complete a quest, then they'll be able to buy new equipment and tasty food. But making money isn't the only reason Light came here today. He wants to figure out how much his Sword God skill will actually help him in battle. And if it goes well for him, then he might be able to become an official adventurer. He tells Ayla to sit on a bench and wait for him while he gets a quest at the front desk. And while he's gone, Ayla takes the opportunity to use her appraisal skill on all the people in the guild. She's amazed by all the different types of skills that exist, but she's also shocked by how useless some of them are, like this guy who has a self-damaging skill. Just then, she hears a commotion over by the front desk, so she looks over and finds Light in the middle of an argument with one of the adventurers in the guild. The man recognizes Light as the guy who's always selling his nuts in the market, so he mocks him and says a loser like him doesn't belong in the guild. But Light completely ignores him and just tells Ayla that they can leave. Now the guy is offended that Light would dare to ignore him, so his completely normal reaction is to attack the Light with his sword. Light's Sword God skill also improves his reflexes. So he was easily able to block the attack. But the guy had no idea Light could do that, so he fully intended to catch a murder charge. Today, the guy's friends see that Light is capable of defending himself, so they convince Jean to just walk away because this isn't a fight he can win. Jean tries to play off his outburst and claims he never really intended to hurt Light, so he and his friends leave the guild to go on their first mission, and shortly after, Light and Ayla leave as well since Light has gotten their quest for them. They head out into the rocky plains, and Light is really excited since he might finally get to see a monster in person. But this place is dangerous, so he tells Ayla to stay close to him. They soon spot their target, and it's that slime monster over in the distance, so Light prepares himself to fight it. He cautiously approaches in an attempt to sneak up on it, but the slime notices him anyway, so Light goes for a full frontal assault instead. He's a lot stronger than he used to be, so he charges at the slime. He slices it in half, accidentally splitting the ground in the process. He's happy that his skill really is useful in battle, but he's going to have to work on his power management so he doesn't cause any more collateral damage. Ayla congratulates Light on his first successful quest. But to complete the quest, they need to cut the slime up and bring the parts back to the guild so they can exchange it for money. Ayla says she feels kind of bad about cutting the slime's body up, but Light reminds her that they'll earn enough money for pizza if they sell the slime parts. Ayla abandons her morals and starts analyzing the slime. Just then, they hear someone yelling on the other side of the plain, so they rush over and find Jean and his party being attacked by a huge ogre. They intentionally picked an easy quest so they could just kill a slime and go home, but they never expected to run into an ogre. The orc swings at them, and they all jump out of the way. But even if they manage to dodge that first attack, they stand no chance of winning against that thing. Light calls over to them to ask if they are all right, and as soon as Jean spots him, he comes up with a plan to escape. He and his friends start running straight at Light, and Light is a bit confused by what they are doing. Then they run past him, and he realizes they're trying to use him as bait so they can flee. The ogre now intends to attack Light, so he has no choice but to fight it, and in fact, this works out well for him since he needs to test the limits of his new skill. The ogre swings his mace at him, so Light jumps to the side to evade it, but he's playing a risky game, so Alo warns him that his sword god skill doesn't increase his defense, meaning if he gets hit even once, he's going to die. Even with the threat of dying, Light still refuses to back down from this fight since he's going to become the world's greatest adventurer, and if he plans to accomplish that goal, he needs to overcome this challenge. He has finally gotten used to his body's new strength, so Light jumps into the air, and as the ogre tries to strike him, he slashes its mace in half. No matter what it takes, he will make sure he catches up to Lena so the two of them can be together again. So in one swift motion, he brings his sword down and cuts the ogre cleanly in half, all while Jean and his friends watch from a nearby hill. A little while later, Light returns to the guild to exchange his items for money, but the receptionist finds it hard to believe that he managed to defeat an ogre all by himself. As proof, Light shows are the overhorn he brought back. Furthermore, Jean's friends confirm that Light is telling the truth because they witnessed the entire event. The receptionist believes him, so she asks him to wait a minute so she can get his reward, and in the meantime, Jean's friends thank Light again for saving them. Just then, a crowd forms at the front of the guild, so Light asks if something happened, and Jean informs him that the S-rank party has just returned. This happens to be the S-rank party that Lena joined, and this is the first time he has seen her in the last 3 months. So Light goes up to her and tries to say hello, but in response, Lena says, "I've never met this man before in my life." Naturally, Light is shocked that he's been rejected, but Isla knows exactly what will cheer him up while they wait for their payment for the ogre job. And that's some good old pizza. Light is still sulking after his encounter, but Ayla's threat of eating everything before he has a chance to get a taste quickly snaps him out of it. He begins stuffing slices into his pizza hole, almost suffocating due to the strain. A stranger hands him something to drink and saves his life. It turns out that it's Lena. She's arrived in disguise, and before Light can blow her cover, she hushes him. She doesn't want Gross to find out that she's here. The three sit down together, and the girls introduce themselves. However, Light is primarily interested in understanding the situation. She tells him to keep it down and counters with a question of her own. Why was he at the guild? Light smirks and proudly declares that he and his little peaks of vacuum that he calls an assistant are actually adventures. It's a long story, and Light is happy to tell it. In the end, Lena's overjoyed to discover that her friend has finally achieved his dream. Light says that with his incredible sword god skill, he'll catch up to her level in no time. Lena's happy to see that Light hasn't changed one bit since they last saw each other. Light asks about Sacred, eager to find out what life is like with the greatest party, but Lena's mood changes at the mention of her team. As it turns out, there are challenges along the way. Lena explains that she's only working with them because that is what the Holy Sister has commanded. She truly has no choice in the situation. The money is great, but the vibes are just off. Lena warns him to stay away from Sacred. They're not the people he thinks they are. That explains why she pretended not to know him earlier. But once I know why she doesn't like Sacred. Lena flashes back to 2 months prior while she and her team were on a job. Their opponent was a giant viper terrorizing the locals. Fortunately, fire weakens such monsters, so Gross instructed the resident pyromaniac to intensify the heat. The adventurers easily defeated the serpent, and the fight proceeded smoothly. But as the wind shifted, a new problem arose. The fire began to spread to nearby farms. Lena tried to warn the others, but Gross couldn't care less. When all is said and done, the farm is completely destroyed and the farmers are ruined. Gross coldly explains that crops can be regrown, but lives cannot. If they hadn't done what they did, then that monster would have hurt who knows how many people. This doesn't sit right with Lena, who goes to complain to the Holy Sister, but as expected, she doesn't care either. She tells Lena that all history will remember is how the great party Sacred defeated an evil monster. As far as the sister is concerned, Lena did a good job, and that's all that matters. Ever since then, the Sword Saint has been troubled by her teammates' callous attitude towards the people they're meant to be serving. Light sees how this has affected his friend and tells her that if she doesn't like her party, she can just join his. Things are never that easy, however, and Lena has to turn down his offer. Light asks if she really wants to stay with Sacred, then why is she crying? Embarrassed, Lena suddenly gets up and leaves in a hurry, leaving Light more worried about his friend than ever. Later that day, he and Isla receive their hefty reward from the guild. It's a whopping 10,000 gold that leaves Isla drooling at the sight of it. But not even all that money can cheer up Light. He's still concerned about Sacred, so Isla tells him that if he's really that worried, he should just ask them himself. As it happens, Gross is currently enjoying himself in the VIP lounge with a couple of QEDs and some bottle service. He's in the middle of recanting a tale of his heroic bravery when the guild receptionist approaches with a complaint from the locals. Apparently, he and his team accidentally caused some more collateral on their last mission. Something about destroying a reservoir. Gross doesn't have time to listen to every little detail and reminds the receptionist that sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the greater good. He asserts that it's unrealistic to expect him to constantly monitor every insect beneath his feet while walking. At this point, Light has heard enough and barges in, demanding that Lena be set free from Sacred. Gross mistakes him for another one of her overzealous fans and, with a snap of his fingers, has security throw the rowdy Light out of the lounge. Some other adventurers warn Light that if he messes with Sacred, then he's bound to get in trouble with the Holy Sister, which would mean no work and no pay. Isla's worried about Light, but he tells her that it's all right. He knows what he has to do now. There's just one problem. They might not be able to eat pizza anymore. Back with Sacred, the team is fawning over their latest gift from the Holy Sister, a sweet new wax. Lena, however, is in her own world, thinking about what Light said to her. Making up her mind, she declares that she's leaving Sacred. The others are surprised. Why would anyone want to leave the greatest team of adventurers in the world? But Lena is certain she wants to be a hero she can be proud of, not whatever they are. She makes for the door, but before she can leave, Gross suddenly stands in her way. He draws his blades and places them against her throat. He says that the audacity to think she could defy him and leave the party is staggering. Lena reaches for her own weapon, but Gross reminds her that no matter how good she is with that sword, there's nothing she can do to stop him and his power. Realizing that she's beat, Lena stands down. It turns out that Gross possesses a powerful pimp hand. He gives Lena a hard slap and drops her to the floor. displaying just how much of a psycho he is when he tells her that she and he are going to be heroes together forever. Later on, people are cheering in the streets as Sacred departs for their latest job to save the day. Lena meekly follows along, trying to convince herself that the only way she can help people is to stick around. Jess and the team stop when they notice a lone figure standing in their path. Light has returned, and this time he's not leaving until his friend leaves with him. He tells her that he and Isla are off to go fight some monsters. Considering they are complete noobs at this whole adventure business, she should join them and come help. After all, they did promise each other that they would become adventurers together. Gross interrupts, telling Light to get out of the way because they have work to do in return. Light draws his sword and throws down the challenge. He and Gross will duel for Lena's freedom. All it takes is calling Gross a chicken for him to take the bait, and the fight is on right then and there. Before the match begins, Gross lets Light know that if he loses, he'll be banished from the Adventurers Guild and the Holy City forever. Lena is horrified because she doesn't believe that Light can win, and Gross agrees. He gives our hero one last chance to give up now. Ayla uses her eye Pokédex to reveal Gross's superhuman speed. To keep things fair, Light thinks about revealing both of his powers as well, but barely gets the word out before Gross is on him. In a flash, the two lock swords as the crowd gathers to watch the duel. Even knowing about it, Light is still surprised by the speed of his opponent. Gross unleashes a flurry of super-fast strikes that Light just barely manages to fend off with a dash. Gross appears behind him, catching Light off guard again and again. As anticipated for an S rank, Gross is not to be taken lightly. Not even the ogre was this tough. With Lean on the line, Light shows no fear as he tries to charge into the attack, but his blow is easily counted, and in the end, his sword is broken by Gross's superior skill. The guy nicknamed Godspeed laughs at the foolish boy and tells Lena that if she swears complete obedience to him, then he might consider mercy. Like it's back on his feet and tells Lena not to worry, he'll win this. Light's confidence feels like more than just empty words, and Lena walks over to him, joined by Isla as well. She tells Light that she believes in him and she knows he'll win. Ready for round 2, Light raises his broken blade and tells Gross to hurry up and bring it. He's got adventuring to do and doesn't have time to waste on the likes of him. Gross is furious and decides that he'll just have to destroy them all. Light is ready, but the only problem is that he needs a new weapon. Looking around, he spots a man on the sidelines with a broom in his hand. He runs over and asks if he can borrow it for a minute. Seeing his enemy wield a simple broom against him only makes Gross all the more angry. He can't believe this joke, but Light isn't laughing. With his skill, even a simple broom can become a weapon without equal. All he needs to do is imagine it. When Gross can no longer bear the ridicule, he launches another attack and advances rapidly. Light realizes the reason he can't keep up is because all he's been doing up until now is watching and reacting. Now it's time to be proactive and predict where Gross will be. Instead of trying to match his speed, closing his eyes, and focusing his mind, Light waits for the right moment to strike. Just as it appears that Gross is about to end the fight, Light seizes the opportunity and strikes with his sword. Or rather, his broom finds its mark, cracking across Gross's face with a satisfying impact and sending him flying. Just like that, Light has swept up the competition and ended the duel with a win. Needless to say, everyone is shocked to see the outcome, including the other members of Sacred. Light warns them that if they decide to mess with him or his teammates, they'll get the same treatment as Gross. With that done, our hero turns to Lena. He asked her one more time if she would like to join him on his adventures, and she is more than happy to say yes. She's been wanting to say that for a long time now. Back at Lena's house, Isla and Light are cheerfully tending to the garden. It's been a week now since the duel, and things are going pretty well for the party. Lena wonders if Light's injuries have healed, and he tells her that he feels fit enough to come with her to the guild for a job or two. Just then, a ring at the front gate announces a messenger from the Holy Sister. The young man informs Lena that the sister has summoned her to talk about what happened with Sacred, but Lena tells them that her answer hasn't changed. She won't return to her old team no matter what. The boy tells her that things will change now, and she won't be receiving the same benefits she once did. This becomes clear when the three go looking for work at the guild and find their selection of job offerings to be limited. The only tasks they're allowed to take are things like clearing out the stores of rats, rebuilding broken homes, and saving lost cats. Isla realizes that her meager jobs won't be enough to pay the bills, let alone afford pizza, a realization that nearly sends her into a coma. Despite all that, Lena gladly accepts the job, all too ready to finally start helping people who really need it. That people are surprised and delighted to have a famous hero like the Sword Saint herself show up to help, and our heroes waste no time getting to work repairing the homes. With the powers of the Sword Saint and the Sword God combined, the two make quick work of every task they're given. By the end of a long day, the three count their earnings and discover that they've barely made any money. I'll ask how much it is in terms of pizza, and the answer isn't good. For Lena, however, the money doesn't matter. Being able to help those in need is all that she's ever wanted. She's satisfied, but she worries that this isn't the kind of adventure that Light wanted it to be. Light reassures her that this has been great for him, and he wouldn't have it any other way. To celebrate, he suggests the three of them make a vow, kind of like wishing upon a star for luck. He comes up with a name for their party, Luxuria, which means an imperfect light. With their new party formed, the three vow to adventure together forever. Meanwhile, the Holy Sister is plotting something sinister for the trio. She has a new S-ranked job only they can accomplish, and while someone as talented as Lena might survive, the other two might not be so fortunate. I appreciate you viewing my anime recap, Unruly Family. Please let me know what you think about this anime recap by liking, sharing, and commenting, and please subscribe to the channel to help us reach 5,000 subscribers.